This lecture gives you an overview of ENSC 182.
The title gives you a general idea of what the class is about, but we're also going to be looking at details of the atmosphere.
Like layers of the atmosphere, climate, and climate change, we'll talk about the weather, air pollution, and the ozone layer. All of these are related to the atmosphere. Here's an image of the Earth showing you the climate bands where it tends to be cloudy and have a fair amount of precipitation, such as this belt in here near the equator, and also this belt here around 60 degrees latitude, and where the climate tends to be sunny and dry area. Those are about 30 degrees latitude. This image shows us the different layers of the atmosphere, and you can see layers that we'll be talking about in the next lecture, the troposphere, the stratosphere, etc.
And then we'll go into the topic of climate. Now, what is climate and how is that different from weather? Well, you know, weather is sort of your everyday experience, like rain and storms and sunny days and things like that. But what the climate is a much longer term thing, maybe 30 years, pretty typical for estimating what constitutes climate. You can think of climate differently from weather. You might think of weather as being what you're going to wear today. And climate is what's in your closet. Now, climate really is about averages, but it's more than that. A lot of times people will say climate is average weather. It's not really quite true. That's part of it. It's not the whole story. If we look at, say, a graph of variation in weather in terms of the frequency of certain amounts of weather, you get the most common weather happening. That would be your mean here, assuming it's a normal distribution like this graph here. This frequency just means how often does it happen. We see that average weather is part of climate. You want to know what is the average. But in addition to that, there's variation. The variance is also part of the climate. Now, in this first blue diagram, we're seeing sort of a narrow amount of variation. But you could get a lot wider amount of variation. In other words, maybe it's sometimes a year is much colder, and other times a year it's much hotter. And that kind of variation is also part of climate. In addition to that, we also have weather extremes, and those are part of climate too. How extreme does it get? It might get very, very cold. Or it might get awfully hot. Let's go out and play in the water. You can think of these graphs, there's kind of generic graphs really. You can think of these graphs as also representing wet or dry. So you get variation. You get the average wet or dryness of a particular climate in a particular place, but sometimes it's a lot wetter and you get wet extremes, or sometimes it's very dry and you get dry extremes. And those patterns of the extremes and the average and the kind of variation you see, all of those together make up what is climate. Because of climate change, all of these things are changing. Now, I want to talk about class business a little bit. You should be reading the syllabus. So the first thing, read the syllabus, and then progress through Moodle from the top to the bottom. I designed the Moodle webpage to be a sequence of things that you should be doing. So start with the top and work your way down, and you pay attention to the calendar. I'll try and set things up so that it'll tell you when I expect you to have finished certain things, including watching videos like this one, and also taking quizzes, doing exercises, etc. After the lecture videos, there will be questions to help you consolidate your learning so you're able to practice what you have seen in lecture and also in readings. We will have labs every week. And the labs are really important for the class because this is a lab science